Welcome back into the Daily Dose. I'm Jeff Hansen. Show's brought to you by Give'emHellBrigham.com and CougarSportsInsider.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Thank you for your support. Appreciate all of you who already subscribed to the channel. I have some goals, so let me communicate those goals to you. By the time football season kicks off, I would love to have 3,000 subscribers to the channel. I think that's very doable. We're a little over 500 away. I think we can get there over the course of the next 6-7 weeks. So maybe we need to aspire a little bit higher. Maybe we need to set a goal for 4,000, 5,000. But whatever it is, let's start working together because clearly I can't do this without you guys fueling the algorithm and helping me out. So let's set some goals. Let's set the first goal at 3,000 subscribers here at the Daily Dose. Appreciate your support and appreciate your help in accomplishing those goals. BYU has a new job opening for the Director of Football Recruiting. But wait a minute, I thought that was Patrick Hickman's job. Well, BYU hasn't confirmed anything, but I think that we can probably read between the lines and figure out what's happening here. Billy Nixon. We know Billy Nixon has left BYU. He's now working for Built Bar. Billy, when he was at BYU, was the director of football operations. Patrick Hickman, he's been a director of football operations at just about every stop in his professional collegiate football career. So it's not a real long walk to make that to conclude that maybe Patrick Hickman is BYU's new director of football operations. That just makes sense. Not official. I'm not reporting anything, but that makes a lot of sense, which would mean BYU is now backfilling the director of recruiting role. This position will work closely with Justin Anderson, who's the director of player personnel. So it's an important position for BYU. There's no doubt about it. BYU needs to get this position right. I have no idea who they're going to hire. I have lots of candidates that I think would be very, very good. Some of them are traditional names. Like we always see the name Jake Longy get thrown around when these positions open up. I think Jake would be phenomenal. Just maybe some names that BYU can make a little bit more of a splash and steal a position coach like Matty Ayu from Weber State and bring him back with Jay Hill. Maybe something like that would work. Or somebody who is currently working at the grassroots level of recruiting like a Will Snowden. There's lots of options. We'll see what BYU wants to do. But there are some things that if I were the director of recruiting, I would focus on first as soon as I got the job. Call it my first 100 days or whatever. This would be my game plan if I got the job. But for what it's worth, if I got the job, then we should all criticize BYU because please don't hire me, BYU. But I do think this plan has some merit. First and foremost, I would start to evaluate my rosters year to year instead of 4-year to 4-year. The transfer portal has changed the game, and you can no longer count on a player signing with you and graduating college 4 years later, maybe 5 years later, as a member of your football team. Will it happen? Of course it will happen, but you can't count on that happening. So everything, although the scholarships will be guaranteed for 4 years, from a roster management standpoint, you've got to be nimble and flexible enough to pivot, to move on an annual basis. So that's what I would do. And I think BYU is doing that already. I think they do a very good job of that. But position yourself to take advantage of the portal and prepare yourself to lose talent to the transfer portal. That's going to happen. Rosters need to become a year-to-year thing, sort of like we see at the professional ranks. You sign a guy to a contract for 3 or 4 years in the NFL, but if it doesn't work out, he gets cut, he gets traded, he retires, he medically retires. There's a lot of scenarios that happen each and every year. So general managers are managing year to year, not contract to contract. I think that's what BYU needs to do. Number 2, my entire recruiting emphasis, quarterbacks, defensive line, offensive line. I think no matter what happens in the portal, or no matter what happens with NIL and what happens with the transfer portal and immediate eligibility and all that good stuff, I can find cornerbacks and running backs and wide receivers and even linebackers out of the transfer portal. If BYU has a talented guy who's LDS, or there's talented players in the state, or for whatever reason, they're able to go and pull wide receivers out of Texas or Florida, great. They should absolutely do that. In no way am I suggesting that BYU should just ignore every other position at the high school ranks. That's not at all what I'm suggesting. But what I am suggesting is that from a high school recruiting perspective, you load up with as many as you can get on quarterbacks, defensive line, and offensive line. You're going to lose players. I want BYU to bring so much talent in at quarterback that they're losing talented players to the transfer portal. That's going to happen. So you've got to be prepared. Stack talent on top of talent on top of talent so that you are immune from those transfer portal hits. When they come, your roster's okay, your quarterback room is okay. And in my opinion, those three position groups, those are the three that you can't live without. Those three, you've got to just continue to stack up talent year in and year out. Number three, and we know BYU does this already, there's kind of two in-state classes for the Cougars. Obviously, there's the state of Utah. BYU always focuses on the state of Utah. But there's that other, air quote, in-state class, and that's members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They may live wherever they live, but BYU does have an advantage there when it comes to recruiting those LDS players. That doesn't mean that every LDS player is going to come to BYU, just the same way it doesn't mean that every player playing on the Wasatch Front is going to come to BYU. But BYU should be involved, evaluating, and recruiting to some respect every single player who fits in those two in-state classes. That's what I would do as the recruiting director. That's what BYU does now. I would not stop that. That needs to be an emphasis forever. Number four, I would focus heavily on what my on-campus brand is. Recruits who visit Texas talk about it all the time. And when you hear words like, the vibe, the atmosphere, that is recruits in recruit language talking about the brand. Guys who visit Texas, they come back raving about the vibe around Austin, the vibe in the locker room, the vibe with the coaching staff. That's because Texas does a heck of a good job in knowing who they are on campus and selling that. No matter what the pitch is, whether they're recruiting a guy like Reiner Swanson, who's LDS and will go on a mission, or they're recruiting the five-star guy who's choosing, between NIL offers from everybody in the SEC and everybody in the Big Ten, Texas has a brand, and the brand is still there. They tailor their recruiting pitch, but the brand and the atmosphere, the vibe, all of that is consistent when somebody goes to Texas. BYU needs to figure out what that brand is. And I think that they've done a good job over the last 6-7 months since Justin Anderson, Jay Hill, everybody's these changes in the Big 12. I think BYU's done a really good job, but I think they need to make sure that they solidify what their on-campus brand is so that no matter what type of player, whether it's the guy from American Fork or it's a non-LDS guy from Texas or it's an LDS player from the state of Alabama who really has never been to BYU, that they recognize and feel the same brand. And finally, the fifth thing that I would do is off-campus marketing, particularly in the state of Utah. This is something that the University of Utah, has done a phenomenal job of over the course of the last 10 years. You can't go anywhere in Salt Lake County without seeing something, reading something, hearing about the Utes. You can't go anywhere without hearing about the Pac-12 and Power 5 and Pac-12 championships and this and that. And for a recruit who's also driving down those same roads, who also hears those same commercials on the radio, and who also sees those same billboards and signs and all that stuff starts to resonate. And I think BYU has the capabilities to absolutely blow Utah out of the water from a marketing perspective. BYU's very, very good at that. I don't know if it's been a resource thing. I don't know if it's been a strategic thing, but it's fallen off a little bit over the last 5, 6, 7 years. I think BYU needs to ratchet that back up. We've seen more BYU Big 12 billboards and things like that across the Wasatch Front in recent weeks. Turn up the pressure, keep going and market BYU, flood the Wasatch Front with BYU football and BYU athletic content so that it starts to ring true in the minds of the kids who live here and will see and listen and hear all of those marketing messages each and every day. That would be one of the most important things that I would do if I were the director of recruiting, is really figure out what my off-campus marketing strategy is, and I would hit that hard all the time. There's a lot of things. The director of recruiting job is a very busy job. It's an absolutely crucial job for BYU to have success in the Big 12 as they move forward. These are the things I would do to start building towards that future success. This would be the foundation. Obviously, there's more to do. Thank you so much for participating in helping us achieve our goals. Appreciate you tuning in and listening. And until next time, give them hell.